You stand at the shore of the Baltic Sea and look out towards the horizon. Perhaps you see the dark waves reflecting the light from the sun, or rocks covered in algae. Maybe there are jellyfish floating in the water, with clover-like red patterns on the top of their heads. You see something black popping up and down, creating waves as it goes. And you remember what your dad told you about Soviet submarines as a child. Do you think it's a seal? Or a submarine? He would ask, grinning at you. It would often scare you, the threat of submarines just going about in the deep waters. But you were well aware that it did happen, more often than you would like to think. Even as a child, you knew this. But then the shape in the water appears again, looking shiny and bald. Two black eyes look back at you. It's just a seal this time as well. You take a breath out in relief. But you can't help to push away the thought that submarines are still a real threat, and that they are out there. It's always been like that, since submarines were placed in these waters. A race to see who could make the stealthiest, how many boundaries you could push, what secrets could you steal without being noticed. Let's return to the bald sea pups. There are so many of them in the Baltic Sea, and they swim in the same waters as the submarines. What if you could use the seals to spy on the submarines? Who would even come up with such a silly idea in the first place? Well, one man did, and he probably had the same thoughts staring out over the waters, feeling the same sort of mystery I did when I was a child, and still feel to this day. Valdemar Felenius was a behavioral specialist and a psychiatrist who came up with the peculiar suggestion to the Swedish Navy about using grey seals. They are easy to train, intelligent creatures, and have the ability to dive down to a depth of 60 meters, was his argument. Sounds reasonable enough, I suppose, especially after he had already done research for a while using his own funds. Valdemar must have been convincing, because the Swedish Navy decided to give their own funding to the project. The first seal research station was located in Säck, but that one burned down shortly after the project began, and a new station was established on Gålö, a peninsula in South Stockholm. The project itself was named Palmen, after the ship that transported the seals, a name which means palm tree in Swedish. But of course, there are no palm trees on Gålö. Just pine trees and slippery rocks. I wish Sweden was a tropical paradise, but sadly it's grey and snowy 5 months of the year. And a name on a boat is the best we can do. Anyway, the project in question was
top secret.
Because why would it not be? It's a project about training cute seals for naval warfare. It's quite crazy to entertain the idea to begin with. Valdemar lived at the research station with his family, and there were about 8 to 11 people working on the project under the oath of complete silence. If anyone asked the staff, they were instructed to respond with, "We're just conducting seal research." The staff consisted of a few conscripts from the army, a chef, and an animal caretaker from the zoo Skansen. Skansen still exists today, by the way, and you should totally visit if you have the chance. They do still have seals. Speaking of seals, let's introduce the stars of this project, or at least the ones that we know of. Potifar, Pelle, Bigge, and Lotta. At one point, Pelle was apparently known as Flyga-Pelle, or Flying Pelle in English, because the research staff forgot about him while he was loaded onto a transport plane, and he was not discovered until the plane had returned to his hangar. Imagine how confused little Pelle must have been.
Huh?
Sadly, there is limited information on the other seals, and Pelle seems to have been a favorite among the researchers, so he got most of the publicity. I guess you could say that Pelle was the rock star of the seal research base. There are pictures of some of them, which include their special harnesses. These had small anchors that would stick to a submarine once the seal made contact. The seal would then break loose and leave the anchor behind. After the harnesses were attached, a float was sent out and a carbine lamp would be used to find the submarine. In addition to the anchors, Felenius used magnets.
Fuck
friggin' magnets, how do they work?
The magnets, which included radio emitters, would attach themselves to the submarines when the seals swam by. So using this technique, the seals wouldn't really have to get as lucky or swim as close to the submarines as when they used the anchors. Of course, enemy craft could not be used for the research project, so submarines of the Sjölejon or Sea Lion class would act as an enemy decoy for seal practice time. The seals were housed in pools in front of the research station. Each pool was built to house about 50 seals, but during the project's run, there were never more than 20 at a time. Here in the pools and out in the Öresund Sea, Pelle and the other seals were trained to attach the anchors to submarines and to localize mines and torpedoes. Training seemed to be going well, because one fateful day, the seals Pelle and Lotta were deployed for a search operation involving a Soviet submarine in Swedish waters. The submarine had used a torpedo against a Swedish merchant ship, which often happened during this time, since Swedish merchant ships often traded steels or other goods with the Axis powers. The supplies to Germany had to be cut off to secure the Allied war effort, and to ensure Allied victory. However, the seal-based mission was short-lived due to the ship Palmen not being fit to take off in stormy seas. Pelle did get to conduct a search mission involving a sunken submarine called Ulven. Ulven had been participating in a military exercise, and while out at sea, an explosion took place, now most likely believed to have been caused by a German mine, causing the submarine to sink. Sadly, all 33 men aboard perished. The mission failed, but you see, this time it was not actually Pelle's fault, as he had been sent out to search in an area several kilometers away from where the submarine sank. The submarine was later recovered without Pelle's help. With 2 failed missions, the future did not look good for the SEAL program, which probably contributed to its eventual closure. Pelle ended up at the zoo I mentioned previously, called Skansen, at the seal pools, but visitors would never have known about his participation in the secret Navy program, since all the documents were classified up until recently. Some of the information is still classified to this day, which in a way leaves this video a bit incomplete and still full of mysteries we might never get to know about. Pelle lived out his days in peace and quiet. It makes one wonder if the other seals would have believed him if he had been able to tell his story. It probably would have sounded unbelievable even to them. Humans would even do such a thing. I believe that seals are a video. A very peculiar part of Sweden's naval history that is barely known, even to Swedish people. Other Swedes I've spoken to have never heard about this project, and some people even thought that I was making it up, which is part of why I made this video, because no one else had. And the next time I bring it up, I can point them here and say, yes, this actually did happen, and here is the proof. Who is the source? It's me! No, it's not me. It's a book, and mostly the website to the SEAL station. Yes, they have their own website. And maybe now, foreigners will also believe me, since almost all of this information is kept behind the difficult barrier of knowing the Swedish language. But what if I told you that we're not quite done yet? The seals were not the only animals being trained at the research station. Yes, you heard me correctly. What if I told you there were such a thing as a Swedish Navy owl or eagles? It's a bit odd to imagine, but Felenius did try to train other animals. But none of them were as easy to train or as successful as the seals. Owls, eagles, and pigeons were intended to be used as a form of air surveillance. Pigeons were successful, but as I'm sure many of you know, pigeons have been used for correspondence for a long time, so it's not exactly groundbreaking. For example, in World War I, they would be used to send letters with orders, or more recently, to transfer a USB stick in South Africa. Because the USB stick being delivered by pigeon was actually faster than the internet. And no, I'm not making that up, that actually did happen. But regardless, these other trials to use other animals were also shut down. And if you want an interesting holiday visit, you can actually sleep over at the Seal Research Station, because it has been fully restored, funded by an EU project to preserve naval history. There's also guided tours. There's a glamping tent named after one of the seals. You can cook food, take a few turns in the sauna with your friends, or go for a cold dip in the Baltic Sea. You can even sleep in Felenia's previous home, because it is now equipped with beds. It does feel a little bit naughty that I'm standing here all these years later, and it says I can't photograph, and I'm filming. And basically says it is forbidden for people without permission to access, photograph, or describe this area. Yes, that's what it says. And also, something I didn't include in the video, apparently there is a practice mine still under here, on the other side. And it says, you can find it and snorkel if you want to. It is not dangerous, but please don't touch it. It is very fragile. It has been in the water since the 1940s. Yeah. I'm not sponsored in any way to talk about this. I just found this out on my own, and I was very surprised and happy to learn that this entire place has been restored, and I would love for it to keep existing in the future and its continued maintenance. Thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. If you liked my history content or just want a place to chill, make sure to check out my Twitch channel. And if you want small bites of information, I regularly upload YouTube shorts as well. See you later!